or namaskara, and vanakkam. It's an absolute pleasure to be here at the Literary Festival and with book lovers. I mean, when you're in a room full of book lovers, I think that's the greatest joy anyone can know. Next to reading a book under a tree with birds singing and, the weather is nice and so on. Anyway, I really thank BLF for inviting me to talk about a writer who's been very dear to me from childhood. And on a day which is hugely special as my translation of his major novel, Alai Osai, the title we've given is The Sound of Waves, published by Hachette India, is available today, and it is actually, I think, a release available in the bookshop here. So now this work of fiction made India's freedom struggle come alive for me through the eyes of ordinary citizens grappling with extraordinary changes in their lives, even as they confront many disasters and the carnage of the partition. Kalki Krishnamurthy's companionship got me through the COVID pandemic, as it was during these 2 years of lockdown and isolation that I translated both Alai Osai as The Sound of Waves and his biography, Kalki Krishnamurthy, His Life and Times, written by Sunda M.R.M. Sundaram in Tamil. I don't think I'm going to do translation for a very long time because the first book, the biography, is 1,007 pages long. And this Alai Osai, Kalki, writes huge novels. And that's 652 pages. So this has cured me of translation for some time now in the future. Now, what amazed me most in translating these two works was this, that the novel and the biography complement one another. The biography is not the story of an individual, not even a writer, but a chronicle of the socio-political, reformist, Renaissance movements in the first half of the 20th century. And as they were witnessed, participated in, analyzed, and recorded by Kalki, the writer. The novel turns the same tumultuous events into the living experience of characters as they journey through the subcontinent. I mean, for a Tamil writer to do this, I think is quite amazing. Starting from village Tanjavur, the characters move to Madras, Bombay, Karachi, Delhi, Agra, Calcutta, Lahore, and more. This nationalistic vision is obvious in Kalki's biography too, as it is in his fiction. Kalki Krishnamurthy, 1899-1954, has always been a beloved writer, and his Ponniyin Selvan, the bestseller, all-time bestseller in the Tamil-speaking world. But Mani Ratnam's PS1 has created a new kind of interest in this writer whose name nobody ever knew outside the Tamil world. Film goers now want to know more about Kalki. The truth is that fiction writing was only one of the many tasks performed by this author, who took so many avatars in his life for 54 years as freedom fighter, social reformist, political crusader, custodian of culture, pioneering journalist, magazine editor, public intellectual, friend, and family man. He engaged in many vitriolic and interesting polemic disputes, some of which have also been published as books. And he campaigned very ardently for Tamil music. A compelling orator, he crusaded for causes ranging from ethics to education. He raised funds for several more causes, mobilized support for indigent writers, artists, and any number of other people, masterminded the construction of 2 monuments, huge monuments. One to memorialize Subramanya Bharati, the great poet of Tamil Nadu, the other Mahatma Gandhi. It's called Gandhi Mandapam in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai. As a writer, it's very difficult to talk about Kalki without giving lists because he seems to have done everything. As a writer, his output included novels, short stories, essays, political analyses, reformist tracts, travelogues, music dance critiques, film, theater, reviews, biography, satire, songs, poems, even a film script or two. And he began his life as a translator of Mahatma Gandhi's My Experiments with Truth. All these works, whichever genre it may be, are all suffused with humor, from slapstick to satire. I think that's what made him loved by everyone. He crafted his own inimitable style too for this flood of writing, which people simply called Kalki Tamil. Kalki loved to cultivate the mystery of his name. One of his best known pen name, hold your breath, he wrote under 13 different pen names. Now, this main pen name, Kalki, he says, I quote, I adopted the name of the 10th avatar of Vishnu because I wanted to destroy everything illiberal, regressive, and evil that I saw around me under the colonial regime. I wanted to launch readers into new directions and create a new age. Look at that voice of confidence, okay, from a man who comes from a small village and a very impoverished family, okay. Born in an indigent family in Tanjavur village, Tamil Nadu, Kalki quit school in answering the Mahatma's call for non-cooperation, became a volunteer in political rallies. Gandhiji, I believe, patted him on the back and said, Acha Desh Sevak, when he was 12 years old. And then the first writing he did was pamphlets for the Congress party in the office of the Congress in Tiruchi. And his training in journalism was in the nationalist magazine called Navashakti in Madras. And then, when he assisted his leader and his lifelong mentor, C. Rajagopalachari, better known as Rajaji, in editing and publishing an anti-liquor magazine called Vimochanam. And I believe during this period, he would go from village to village. He was staying in the ashram, Gandhi ashram down south. Go from village to village singing songs against liquor, telling stories and making the villagers really enjoy his talk. Whether they gave up liquor or no, we don't know. It was as editor, Ananda Vikatan, that Kalki came into his own. His writings boosted the magazine's sales and stature. His fiction captured the heart of the Tamils. What did it do? It breathed patriotism, reformist zeal, and it had tones ranging from fierce idealism to frustrated irony. His stories trounced caste, creed, gender, and discrimination, caste, creed, gender, discrimination. He was opposed to child marriage, he campaigned against untouchability, and he promoted women's education and women's emancipation. And what is really interesting is that in his books, his characters, right from the start, the women are not victims. They're always extremely savvy and intelligent and provocative agents of change. He attracted readers of the most diverse kind and certainly contributed to drawing a record number of women into the fold of readers. Many women have told me that they owe their education to the fact that their parents were converted by Kalki's writings. I think that itself is a wonderful thing. He was one of the first to write about the freedom fighter as a hero in his novel. Kalki is, I think I don't want to talk about his novels because they should be read. We'll go on to 1940, when Kalki weathered the shock of being unceremoniously booted out of Ananda Vikatan for his decision to perform satyagraha, which was an act of sedition in those days. Coming out of prison, he launched an eponymous magazine in partnership with his dearest and equally crazy about freedom fighting. This was P. Sadashivam, who became his partner. But both of them were paupers. So the funds were raised by Sadashivam's wife, M.S. Subbulakshmi, when she acted in a film, just to raise money for this magazine, Kalki. Readers queued to grab copies of Kalki right from the first issue. This was a new magazine on the block, and people stood in newsstands, bus stops, and railway stations in queues. Some of them read the book magazine as they walked home. Others subscribed to 2 issues so that there wouldn't be any rivalry in the household. Some households, I believe, solved the problem by one person reading aloud the serial as soon as the magazine came home. All this I heard from different people who recollected their experience of reading Kalki. And the National Audit Bureau of Circulation certified that each issue of Kalki had a print order of 71,366, which may seem small now, but this circulation was the largest that any newspaper or any magazine in any region of India or in any language had at that time. This was something, it was a phenomenon. Kalki faced a share of criticism. The Manikodi group of writers accused Kalki of plagiarism and populism. Political opponents threw their brickbats. Kalki packed his counter punches with very sharp humor, always remembering the words of the French philosopher Voltaire, whom he quoted. I disagree with every word you say, but I will fight to my death your right to say it. I just love that spirit of dissent, and promoting dissent. He remained a stranger to malice. He could publish the writings of even his worst adversaries, people with whom he had engaged in very acrimonious spats. Similarly, ideological differences between himself and C.N. Annadurai, who was the man, the man of the DMK party then. This did not prevent Kalki from hailing the DMK leader as the Bernard Shaw of Tamil Nadu. In fact, the most moving obituaries of Kalki were written by writers from the DMK camp. But today, Kalki is best remembered as a writer of historical fiction, a genre which he pioneered in his mother tongue and in which he till now remains unsurpassed. The question is, why did he opt for this particular genre? Kalki makes no bones about using the swashbuckling genre of historical fiction to redefine the goals he dreamed of for his motherland. Having devoured Walter Scott, Victor Hugo, Tolstoy, and many others, he became convinced that by presenting the magnificence of his own country through historical fiction, he could arouse his own people from the torpor and the apathy engendered by colonial rule. The best way of replacing their sense of insecurity and inferiority with pride and confidence was to remind them of the magnificence of their past heritage. And so, the first historical novel that he wrote, called Parthiban Kanavu, allegorizes the thirst for freedom in a king of the Chola kingdom, who refuses to make compromises in his quest for freedom. Shivakami in Shapatham, which I consider to be an extraordinarily constructed novel, The Vow of Shivakami, showed how the civilian population, arts, and ethical values are the first casualties of violence and warfare. Cult novel Ponniyin Selvan. In fact, one of my friends says that Ponniyin Selvan should be completely banned so that people would read the other writings of Kalki. Because, for many people, Kalki begins and ends with Ponniyin Selvan. So this cult novel, 25,000 pages long, 5 volumes, written over a period of nearly 4 years, when it was serialized in the magazine in weekly installments. This was written without any prepared synopsis, notes on the narrative flow, or plot structure. All Kalki had were books of history stored in a steel trunk beside his desk, and his in-depth knowledge of ancient and medieval Tamil literature. Anyone who has read Ponniyin Selvan, even in translation, will know that is absolutely scattered and littered with quotations and references to any number of references from ancient, not only literature, ancient literature and poetry, but also from inscriptions, temple inscriptions, copper plates, and a zillion other sources. So he just made them interesting, though. Ponniyin Selvan was launched in 1950, and that was the year India became a republic. As a political journalist, Kalki knew all the dangers lurking within and without when a new nation is formed. corruption and conspiracy, malice and one-upmanship, hypocrisy and deceit, evil and violence, in all their degenerate forms, he had seen up close, and he had also seen up close power madness. As a writer, his responsibility, he thought, was to urge the citizens of the newly emerging nation to choose leaders of unimpeachable virtue. Leaders who were wise, sagacious, selfless, fearless, valiant, compassionate. People who would uphold noble values, follow dharma. Remember, this belongs to another world altogether. That's not our worldview now. It is said that since the Mahabharata was shaped in a rounded form during the time of the Mauryan king Ashoka, the bards who created the Mahabharata shaped Yudhishthira, who is also known as Dharmaputra, with all the noblest qualities in Ashoka. This is what historians say. Similarly, Kalki, who had lived when Gandhi walked the earth, shapes Arulmozhi Varman, or Ponniyin Selvan, with all the values that he revered in the Mahatma. Prince Arulmozhi, who would later become Emperor Rajaraja I and establish an empire as vast as Mauryan Ashoka, is imbued with physical prowess as well as mental, moral strength. He respects everyone, from a fisherman to a high-ranking prince. He is humble, compassionate, intelligent, loyal, true, all the qualities that Kalki venerated. Most importantly, he has no interest in power. He renounces a kingdom because he thinks somebody else has a greater right to the throne. During his battle in Sri Lanka, Arulmozhi Varman ensures that the civilian population is fully protected. He respects and supports every creed in his realm. Kalki also makes him say, I'm sure they're Kalki's own views, it is dangerous for religion to enter politics in any form. The truth is that he writes about a society driven by class distinctions. As he writes about a society driven by class distinctions, Kalki underscores the fallacy of grading human beings on the basis of caste or class. In a patriarchal society, he exalts the intelligence of women. Kalki's Alayosai, with which I'm going to conclude, The Sound of Waves, was serialized just before Ponniyin Selvan. 1948, I think the serialization began in Kalki magazine. Kalki believed that it was his best work, and he said, I offer this with great pride and humility to my readers. Kalki had planned to write, in Alayosai, Kalki had planned to write about the birth of a great nation, a new nation, aglow with the spiritual radiance of the Mahatma. But the horrors of partition and the gunshot ricocheting from the assassination of the Mahatma put an end to all valorization. The writing, Kalki's writing in Alayosai, from start to finish, betrays apprehensions, quivering in the images, constantly repeated, images of drowning below the waters with the deafening roar of the waves above. We know that water always refers, it's an old symbol of the unconscious and of the unknown, the depths of the unknown. And the sound of the waves to Kalki seems like an ominous prophetic ring for the future of the country and for the future of humanity. The storyline follows the fortunes of Sita, born and raised in a poor Tamil family in Bombay, married to Raghavan, an enthusiastic supporter of British rule in India. Raghavan holds a powerful government job in New Delhi and sees no fault with the ways of the oppressors. Along comes Sita's cousin Surya, a dauntless revolutionary committed to the socialist credo. And he is also does not shirk from acts of violence, which many of the people, rebels in those days, were performing against the Mahatmas and people who followed the Mahatma, against their wishes. Though Kalki condemns violence, somehow he sees Surya as someone with great sincerity of purpose. Now, Surya's political pursuits lead him to Dharini, a young and spirited party member who happens to be Raghavan's first love, the woman he continues to long for. And I hope you don't mind if I make a little interjection here. There is a Dharini sitting here whose father is a very famous Tamil writer and playwright, and he named her Dharini after reading Alayose. The reader can see how, though rooted in Tamil culture, in Tamil region, in the Tamil language and Tamil identity, Kalki's vision was always eclectic and inclusive. It focused always on the nation as a whole, not on one particular part of the nation. He was very, very attached to Tamil. He had a frenzied love of his mother tongue. And of course, he was a true Tamil born, but he never lost his vision of India as a whole. And I think that is something that I try to remember now. He raises questions as relevant in our times as they were in his own. These questions are about politics, ethics, state, religion, society, individual, and the vestiges of colonialism, of privilege, of marginalization, history, and what is becoming very dangerous now, cultural revisionism. Kalki has raised questions about all this in Alayose. Alayose compels you to also confront the contradictions between what you believe and what you want to believe, what you are and what you ought to be. It is something that makes you a little uncomfortable at certain times because it makes you see within yourself, as all great fiction should do, really. Kalki, because writing should disturb you, it should make you uncomfortable. Writing should not make you smug and complacent and comfortable. Kalki had been reprimanded by critics for preferring propaganda to literary worth. In fact, many people told him you should stop thinking about promoting your ideas and concentrate on the aesthetics of writing and aesthetics of literary endeavor and output. Kalki's answer, and I quote, "Expect writings of lasting literary value from the hundreds and thousands of Tamil writers who will appear hereafter. Let me be what I am, a propagandist." In his keynote address at the Tamil Writers' Conference, a couple of months before his death, Kalki spelt out his credo, and we can see this probably as his last words on his own pursuit, his own mission, his own ideals. The test of good writing is whether it aids the unification of the human community or whether it promotes discord. Any writing that militates against the ethical principles of love, empathy, justice, and truth will bring harm to humanity. And any evil sprouting in any section of society will have an irreversible impact on the whole world. In every avatar he took, and in all the endeavors that he performed in each one of these avatars, in the many different fields in which he worked, what we see in Kalki Krishnamurthy is this. In him, we see the revolutionary inflames the writer. The poet coexists with the propagandist. The creative mind informs the crusading spirit. Without fear, with compassion. Thank you. And we have 5 minutes. So if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to answer.
It's not a question, but it's my observation. Thoroughly enjoyed. As you were saying, I can't keep on reading all this, but if you want to enjoy, you must read Kalki. That I really was impressed, and I want to share that. Very recently, I read Ponniyin Selvan in Kindle, about 1,000 odd pages. It was a joy. And you have also now enthused me to read Alayose, which I will. Lastly, I want to share perhaps...
It's available here.
I will. And if possible, I would like to take your autograph on that as a person who has given a commentary on Kalki in a thorough fashion. I'm a fan of Kalki myself. One thing which I like to share with you, particularly, of course, others who also know, he was also known for his sense of humor and fun. And he went to T.A. Madhuram's house. You may be knowing this.
Yes.
And T.A. Madhuram, I can only say it in English, in Tamil, I can also say that. When T.A. Madaram asked him, what can I offer you? Kalki said, T.A. Madaram. This I thought I could share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Very nice to meet you in person. I have been reading your works since my teenage
Oh my God.
days. And I admired you as a journalist, and there were a couple of women journalists like you which inspired me to get into the profession. Today I'm a writer and I'm a poet. So what I wanted, for me it's not a question, it's more of an observation. I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm a daughter of a Tamil scholar and Tamil actor, and my father betted in college that, if he had two daughters, the first daughter's name will be after Ponniyin Selvan's main character, Punguzhali. And it so happens that the first daughter happened to be my sister. Her name is Punguzhali. And both of us were named after, characters in Tamil literature and mythology. One question I want to ask, and I think you raised it very pertinently today, is we live in in an era of intolerance. All of us are aware of that. It's a culture of banning any kind of thoughts, any kind of dialogue. And Kalki, who's been seen as the father of modern Tamil literature, I think it's not only about the perspectives he brought around women or history or journalism, that he espoused, but I think it was a way of thinking which departed from what was there earlier. How are his works relevant today? Because there is a revivalism of progressive thinking, but I think it's deeply rooted in class dialogue. It's a class narrative, right? It's not the manto that we heard in the 40s. So how is Kalki relevant today? Which, his narrative was above the class narrative. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
I actually mentioned that in my talk, that he was writing about a class-driven society, but he showed how ridiculous it was to judge people on the basis of caste or class or any other difference, any other form of evaluation. This is a question that cannot be answered now, but if you read Kalki's books, you will see that he's constantly, a writer cannot say, give up class distinctions. That is a slogan. But a writer has to show how ridiculous it is to follow class distinctions or caste distinctions or any regressive policies. He has to show it through the behavior of his characters. And Kalki has done it in both ways. One is he's shown people whom you admire for following, for observing, for the values that they espouse and they live by. That is one kind of character. The other kind of character is someone who lives in the very opposite way. Someone who does not follow the kind of dharmic principles that Kalki imbibed from Gandhiji and which he followed in his own life. So you have somebody like Soundarya Raghavan, who is completely thrilled with British rule in India and thinks that he's exceptionally privileged and blessed to be working for the white man. And then you have Surya, who's a revolutionary who wants equality, in the country. He wants to drive the foreigner out. He wants freedom. So, but it's by creating characters that a writer will show you what his values are. And you have to read they will not give you lists of do's and don'ts, right? So if you read Kalki, you will know it. And you will know this even more directly if you read his non-fiction.
I have lived through the ages of Kalki. Maybe the Parthivan Ganavu was the first magazine, which one the entire family will stand in queue to read. What was amazing me is his description of the nature and the love for the nature. I lived through the Tanjore district. The description has been vivid. Did he ever visit Sri Lanka? Because when I visited Kandy, I could see that he's mirroring in his Kalki exactly the Sri Lanka as he saw it here. Is it?
Yes. Actually, he did. He traveled extensively through the regions where he located his novels. He made special visits to Ajanta, to Sri Lanka, and so on. But even more than that, even as a young man, as a cub reporter, so to speak, He had attended Congress sessions in Haripura, in Karachi. He had been to many different, he went to see the refugees in Panipat and Kurukshetra after the partition. So he traveled widely remember he was a journalist. So he was traveling widely and he had exposure to many parts of the country. That's why he saw India as a single country. He did not see it as, as a conglomeration of different states, each locked into its own culture and language. I think it's time now.
It is time. Thank you so
Right?
much, Gowri. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being such an appreciative audience.